TCU, once again, let's run it back. A winnable game in front of them. Chance to get to bowl eligibility. It's at home. Preview. Keys to the game. Coming up next here on Lockdown Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also on your favorite podcast platform. Keys to the game here momentarily. We're also going to talk about this TCU Oklahoma State matchup at 6 p.m. on Saturday. TCU basketball back on the floor tonight against Florida Gulf Coast. I'll start here. I've been surprised this week. I always say, I'm never going to tell people how to feel. This is a fan-led podcast. So we just get the emotions out. It's a marketplace of ideas. I love hearing from you guys on the YouTube comments, on social media, on Twitter. TCU's rocking the Spit Blood jerseys tomorrow. The red accents, the gray jerseys. They're bringing the spikes back around the collar of the uniform. You guys like the Spit Blood uniforms? I do, but I'm kind of a sucker for anything like alternate uni-wise. I like shaking it up. I like new things. We'll see what it looks like on the field on Saturday. I believe this is the first time they've done it at night. Somebody mentioned that to me on Twitter. But last time they wore those uniforms against Oklahoma State, Frogs won in double overtime. And it was a comeback victory against Spencer Sanders and that Oklahoma State-led team. And that was in 2022. It was one of the first moments where you were like, okay, this team is really good. Like maybe they have a chance to go on a run. I have been surprised, though. I realize it's still a small sample size. It feels like there's no juice for this game, which I totally understand from an Oklahoma State standpoint. I get it. I mean, they haven't won a Big 12 game. The season has not gone as planned. Mike Gundy is going on weird rants during the week. Totally get it. From TCU's perspective, again, not telling people how to feel. I'd love to hear your ideas and let me know if and why you're pessimistic. But I feel like I'm typically the one that people are like, you need to be more positive, man. You need to tell us why we should get excited and stop being cautiously optimistic. I generally believe I'm the person that's kind of like, I hope this works out, but I'm not sure. I think if everything goes the right way, it will. I was honestly, make no mistake about it. Losing sucks. I don't like it when the Frogs lose, especially when they lose to Baylor. That's not fun for me. I've taken a lot of heat from friends and family this week because of that. Because I have a lot of Baylor fans in my life, unfortunately. But I mostly came away encouraged from that game. Defensively, it was a mess in the second half. A lot of that was due to injury, and yes, I will concede those injuries are still there. I'll get to that later here in segment 1. Marcus Steele and Hakeem Ajibalaiba on the defensive line will not be available on Saturday, according to Sonny Dykes. And so Bryson Washington, Baylor running back, ran for a bunch of yards. They were super effective on offense. Sawyer Robertson had a good game, and they ended up winning the ball game. Offensively, I thought it was one of the better performances they've had all year. It was a little bit inconsistent, and there were some times where they left some meat on the bone. Sonny said after the game, if I had the decision to make again, I would have gone for it on 4th and 2, right? Tried to keep the pressure on Baylor, all those things. But they didn't turn the ball over. There weren't a lot of boneheaded penalties. They still can't run the ball the traditional way, which stinks. They are moving it with Savion Williams. And that's something they're going to have to get figured out in 2025 because Savion's not going to be there next year. But they have found a creative package that works in the run game and gives them some more options. I thought Josh Hoover played a lot better. I think Baylor, and I say this begrudgingly, is on the uptick at the moment. I don't know if they'll be able to sustain it, but it seems like Dave Aranda's secured his job for another year. They played some tough competition earlier in conference play, and they competed pretty well. They broke in a new quarterback, a new running back. In the trenches, it seems to be coming together for them. And yes, it is super disappointing to me that they were better up front because I feel like TCU's been trying to build this offensive defensive line for a while, and you're still not seeing the results you'd like. I'm just surprised at how many people seem to be kind of jumping ship after a loss. But maybe I'm misrepresenting the fandom. And if I am, I apologize. That might be a little dramatic, but it feels like that was a big like turning point for some folks and saying, I'm not sure how interested I am in the rest of the year. And I get the schedule is not as tough as we thought, but 8-4 is still on the table. There's a bowl game. There's a lot that is still out there for TCU to play for. And they're playing Oklahoma State on Saturday. The first key to this ball game. Got to find a way to stop the run. And everybody's freaking out because it's Oly Gordon, right? And Oly Gordon is an outstanding running back. TCU is banged up on the D-line. Once you get past Caleb Fox and Timon Mitchell, who are not guys that you probably want starting at the moment. Sterling Brooks, is he going to get some run this week? Connor Lindgren. There's not a lot of interior defensive linemen that are healthy and available for TCU in this ball game. My optimistic view on this, though, is Oklahoma State has not run the ball well. And you might say, Stephen, well, they just haven't faced a defense this bad. They haven't faced a rushing defense that is this incompetent. I think there's a chance they have a better game than they typically would. But the Pokes are averaging about 3.5 yards per carry. Oly Gordon, I think he is a great talent. He's got 593 yards on the season. Let me check his game log to make sure I'm right about this, but I think he's had over 100 yards only twice this year. Yes, he went for 126 against San Diego State and 107 against BYU. But that 126 against San Diego State was hard earned. I mean, it was 28 carries, about 4.5 yards per pop. Arizona State kept him in check last week. Baylor did a pretty good job keeping him in check. West Virginia kept him in check. K-State, 15 for 76. Utah, 11 for 42. Now, TCU defense has a weakness there. Andy Avalos has had all week, though, to try to come up with some different ways to mitigate that. And I think the key is load up the box, put pressure on Alan Bowman to make plays. And that crossover I did with Cody Stovall yesterday, it almost felt like, and I saw Philip Starr from the 1012 Network. He was talking about this too because he did a crossover with the Frogs Insider folks, Jamie Plunkett and Melissa Trebwasser, about this game too. And he was like, it felt like both fan bases are trying to compete for who has the worst run defense. Because Oklahoma State's had issues stopping the run too. And so, you know, both fan bases that are watching their teams every week, it's like, no, you don't understand how bad our run defense is. TCU held up pretty well against Utah, a team that had a good rushing attack and was limited at quarterback. And I get they were healthier then, but I think I just believe they can hold their own better than people are giving them credit for on Saturday. And I will gladly eat those words. If I'm wrong, I do daily content. I'm wrong frequently, not a new thing. I'm not a believer in this defensive line group as currently constructed long-term. I do think they can get away with the personnel they have on Saturday against a Oklahoma State offensive line that's also having a lot of issues this year. But we'll see. Key number 1, stop the run. Key number 2, I actually think they got pretty close last week. If the defense could have stayed healthier, maybe it would have been the case. Can you play a complete game? And can you get off to a good start? This Oklahoma State team, the losses have piled up. Do not do what you did against them. Not give them a reason to rally around each other and say, hey, let's go win one. Hasn't been the season that we've wanted, but let's go all out and let's win one. Get out to an early lead and try to break their will. Try to make them say, here we go again. We've just been snake bit this year. Our coach isn't feeling it. We're not feeling it either. Make them check out by going on some good drives early, especially on offense. Offense is going to have to carry the day here. Oklahoma State's defense is bad. TCU needs to make them pay. And that means none of these early empty drives. Last week against Baylor, you go 3 and out. Now the defense got to stop. They came back and scored and did a nice job. But, man, make this team pay. For real. Get out there and score early. Take their sideline out of it. Get the home crowd behind you. It's a night game. Should have a good crowd. Get that home atmosphere behind you and get out to an early lead against this Oklahoma State team. And then finally, and they did a nice job of this last week, but keep finding creative ways to make these things happen. I mean, I've really been impressed with Kendall BRS and his ability to make this machine work, even though the parts haven't totally fit together well. He's done it with Savion. I think he's done some good things in the passing game, scheming that up. The screen game, which wasn't as prolific last week. We'll see how it plays out moving forward. I wonder what JP Richardson's motivation is. I mean, not that he ended on bad terms at Oklahoma State, but playing your old team, go show out, make some things happen. I think the Frogs are going to win. Now, I'm not picking them to blow out Oklahoma State because they haven't really blown anyone out this year. And until they do it, aside from Long Island, I guess, but until they do it, I don't see that being the case. I feel like the 11-point spread, as it's currently listed at on FanDuel, shout out to our friends there, it's a little rich for my blood. So I think they win by a touchdown. And it's probably closer than we want, and there's probably some mistakes that are being made. I'm not saying bowl eligibility should be the standard or is the standard, but I do think it's an important thing to get to. And if you can get to it with a bye week coming up and 2 games left in the regular season, I believe that we'll get a sigh of relief from this coaching staff because it will allow them to do some things moving forward throughout the rest of the year that could be beneficial for the future of this program. And I want to talk about the future of this program more coming up next here on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. LinkedIn Jobs. If you need somebody to work for your small business, go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. 86% of small businesses find a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Cannot beat that type of turn time. And the deal is because everybody's on LinkedIn. People are looking for work on LinkedIn, and many of the folks that are looking on LinkedIn, they're not looking at other job sites. In fact, 75% of people that are on LinkedIn, that's the only place they're looking. They're not on the other job sites. They're just exclusively there on LinkedIn, so you get a wide net to cast, and then they have screening questions and other tools that allow you to pare that down so that you're not going through all these resumes, and you can more adequately and more efficiently find the people that you need. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Use that purple hiring frame if you'd like. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege. Number one place to find talent for your business. So my friend Paul Catalina, he had me do something yesterday on 365 Sports. He does a top 5. I think it's every day. It's pretty crazy. I used to work in the radio world where we're doing 3 hours of content a day. I guess I'm still doing daily content, but now that I'm removed from it, I'm like, that's sort of insane that we were doing 3-hour shows every single day, 5 days a week. But anyway, Paul does a top 5 and he has different topics. And so he wanted to shake it up a little bit. And he said, come in and do a top 5 ways to fix TCU football. And so I ran down some pretty generic things. Like I feel like things that a lot of folks would list. One was keep Josh Hoover. I do think there's going to be a market for him in the offseason, and TCU needs to find a way to keep him around so he can build on what he's done this year going into next year. I also discussed Sonny not hiring his homies anymore. So like maybe getting away from the air raid tree that he's been so married to through his career, finding some coaches that have a background that features more physicality and toughness. I feel like you have to marry that with a lot of the passing game concepts that have been successful. Win the turnover battle, get better in the trenches, get tougher. Those were the 5 things that I listed going into 2025. But it made me think, as I was putting it out there, it does feel like this could possibly be. I'm not saying it is. It's going to take a good off season, good coaching next year, but this could be a bridge to what is a special season next year. That being said, who are the cornerstone players for this program right now? Because Matt's brought it up. He's been like, he's got questions about development for just this team in general. Are they getting talent to a place where they can play at a high level? And I would contend that, I mean, Josh Hoover's a guy that you've sort of, it's made known that you're going to try to build around him offensively. That means you're going to throw the ball a lot. And I mentioned in this top five, I was like, either he needs to find a way to be more effective in the run game, or they're going to have to attack that dynamic differently. But his lack of dual threat ability does seem to be hurting the offense in some ways right now. Aside from that, though, I mean, your O-line, you're going to have some guys coming back. Cade Bennett should slide in at one of those guard spots. James Brockermeyer, Carson Bruno, Remington Strickland, Ben Taylor Whitfield. All those players should be back and should be in a place where they're fighting for the two deep. I'm not sure if any of those guys, I mean, I would love to say Cade Bennett, but we haven't had the chance to see him play at this level yet, are like cornerstone pieces. I think defensively, Marcus Deal is that dude that you want to build around the next few years. Maybe it's some freshmen like Chad Woodfork. They got some exciting freshman receivers right now. Kyle Baker, Braylon James, not technically a freshman. At the running back spot, I think Jeremy Payne is one of those dudes that you can slide in as like, yes, this is a guy that we want to build the plane around moving forward. But you have to get him more opportunities. Jordan Bailey's an exciting guy, but he hasn't played a lot this year. Major Everhart in that same vein. And I'm not really worried about receiver because I think TCU is just going to find dudes. Eric McAllister, that's a guy that I think next year will obviously be a huge part of this, but is also someone that you want to make sure is a foundational piece of this program. But I'm curious your thoughts. And it doesn't just have to be someone with big-time production, but, I mean, that's typically that and the intangible stuff kind of goes hand in hand. There are other players on the team that can be great leaders that don't necessarily have to be on the field a ton of plays on Saturdays, but from a fan perspective, these are the guys that we're watching. These are the guys that we're seeing moving forward. Jamal Johnson's played a ton of snaps this year. Safety, right? Linebacker, been kind of a rough go. I like what we've seen from Max Carroll in limited action. Caleb Larmzor, I feel like he could be one of those guys. But TCU needs to develop more of those players because one thing in the Baylor game that stood out to me, yes, there were some coaching miscues. And in college football, it's always going to come back to coaching because those are the people that are running the game management. They're calling the plays. They're coming up with, how are we managing the clock, all those things. But also they're the ones that are buying the groceries. So it's not like the NFL where you have, it's more like the NFL now because you have a scouting department to some degree, but there's not that separation like the NFL where you have an owner, GM who are handling the personnel decisions and then it's up to the coach. It's like, here's what we have. Now you got to go make it work. In college football, you're selecting people that should, in theory, fit what you want to do, and then you have to execute it so that they do those things. But one thing that stood out to me in the game last week, there are just moments, and part of it, is scheme and all that stuff. But there are also just moments where guys just have to make plays. You got to make plays. 4th and 9, Baylor's got the ball at midfield. They're trying to go score. And if you get a stop, you get the ball back, and you at least have one play or maybe two plays potentially to get in field goal range yourself. Somebody's got to step up and make something happen. And Caleb Larmzor comes on a blitz, and he almost got there, but he couldn't quite do it. Namdi got beat in coverage on the tight end trig. And you let them convert, and then suddenly they have the opportunity to go down and get in field goal range. A couple other times the defense had chances on 4th and 2, 3rd and short. And I mean, Savion made some big plays. He also had a huge drop. Jack Besh made a great catch and ran a great route to tie that ball game. But you have to have dudes that make plays in big moments, and that's part of this process too. Building it for the future and building it moving forward. We'll come back. We got basketball tonight. TCU men's basketball. They're back in action. They're 1-0, and they'll face Florida Gulf Coast. We'll preview that and more coming up here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APR on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of high net worth for any worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard here is Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For specific product disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk and the rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Also, shout out to our friends at FanDuel who have been rocking with us for a long time. FanDuel is where the game starts. You can bet on games at FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. One $5 bet. If you win it, you get $150 in bonus bets. Again, this one $5 bet, get you $100, $50 in bonus bets. FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. FanDuel, it's where the game starts. A couple of you had thoughts on yesterday's crossover episode with Cody Stovall from Locked On Pokes. Jacob Langford said this game sounds like quite the pillow fight. But that being said, I'm excited. I'm excited too. I mean, there's only a few of these left. And hopefully we get one more. We get a postseason game. I think we will. But there's not a lot of these ball games left for the team. And we got to enjoy them while we can as they prepare for next year. They're going to bye week. Then they get Arizona and Cincy. And then hopefully a postseason contest. And that's it. And then an Oklahoma State fan jumped in and he was not super optimistic about tomorrow night. But 6 p.m. on Fox Sports 1, TCU Oklahoma State. Should be a good one. TCU men's basketball, they will play Florida Gulf Coast tonight. That game, I believe, tips off at 7 o'clock. Yes, it does. It's on ESPN+. And Florida Gulf Coast is 0-1. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the opponent itself because I think a lot of these non-conference games, they'll get Michigan next week and some other challenging teams later on in the schedule. Michigan next Friday. They play Texas State on Tuesday. But this is about yourself. This is about getting better and these transfers coming together and gelling as the year goes on. I was super impressed with the offense on Tuesday. Now, listen, the competition is what it is, but I thought Frankie Collins looked good as that true point guard. I felt like they shot the ball better. There seems to be that typical Jamie Dixon type of athleticism on this team where you got long guards who can cover a lot of ground, make plays. I believe this team should be better at defense this year if they just commit to it. But it was exciting to see this team in action, and I'm ready to see them as the year goes on. TCU men's basketball, they play Florida Gulf Coast, 7 o'clock tonight. The women, they play New Orleans on Sunday. And let me make sure I get that timing and everything right. But they're also looking to get to 2-0 as Mark Campbell hits year 2 of his tenure. 2 p.m. game against New Orleans. So Haley Van List, Sedona Prince, who were very active scoring the ball earlier this week, they'll get back in action Sunday. So hoops going on. We'll have a post-game show Saturday, probably around 10 o'clock, given that the game kicks off at 7. Live post-game show. You can chime in on that. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Have a good weekend, everybody, and I hope you enjoy this Saturday against the Pokes.